Here's a question I want you to sit with for a second. If I told you that a fall severe enough to break a hip could be waiting for you not on an icy sidewalk, not on a wet bathroom floor, but in the middle of your own living room, on a perfectly dry, perfectly ordinary afternoon, while you were doing nothing more dangerous than walking to get a glass of water, would you believe me? You should, because I have watched it happen more times than I can count. And here's the part that should really catch your attention. The danger isn't hiding in your environment. It's hiding in the way you move. Specifically, in the way you take a single step, something you've done millions of times without ever once thinking about it. I've spent close to 3 decades working directly with older adults, watching the way they walk into a room, the way they turn a corner, the way they catch themselves when something goes slightly wrong. And after all these years, I can tell you that the single biggest predictor of a future fall isn't age, it isn't a lack of strength, and it isn't even poor eyesight. It's a walking pattern that develops so slowly, so quietly, that almost nobody notices it happening until they're lying on the floor wondering what just went wrong. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what that pattern looks like, why it's so much more dangerous than it feels, and the one correction that can start protecting you from your very next step forward. No equipment, no gym membership, no complicated routine, just a shift in how you move that your body already knows how to do because you were born doing it correctly. Stay with me until the end, because I'm also going to give you 5 specific exercises that will help this new pattern become second nature again. Let's start with the pattern itself, because chances are you already know exactly what I'm about to describe. Picture someone walking down a hallway. Their steps are noticeably shorter than they used to be. Their feet barely lift off the floor. Instead, there's this low, sliding, dragging quality to each step, like the feet are skimming the surface rather than rising in D, falling the way they're supposed to. The upper body tips slightly forward. The eyes drop toward the ground, scanning for danger, a few feet ahead. The arms hang mostly still at the sides instead of swinging naturally. And the whole thing has this careful, guarded quality to it, as if some part of the brain has quietly decided that the floor can no longer be trusted. This is what's known in physical therapy as a shuffling gait, and it is, without exaggeration, one of the most common and most dangerous walking patterns I see in people over the age of 70. What makes it so sneaky is exactly how gradually it forms. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides to start shuffling. It creeps in. Maybe there was a stumble a year or two ago that shook someone's confidence. Maybe a joint started aching, and walking normally became uncomfortable. Maybe balance simply felt less certain, so the steps got smaller and the feet stayed closer to the ground almost as insurance. Whatever the starting point, the pattern reinforces itself. Shorter steps feel safer in the moment, so they become the new normal. And that new normal, ironically, is on E of the riskiest ways a person can possibly move through the world. Here's why. When your foot is shuffling just above the surface instead of lifting cleanly, there is almost no clearance between your shoes and whatever is on the ground in front of you. A slightly raised floorboard, the edge of a rug that's curled up half an inch, a pet toy, a phone charger cord stretched across a hallway. Any of these things, which a person with a normal gait would step right over without a second thought, becomes a genuine hazard for a shuffling foot. And because the steps are already short and the body's weight is already leaning forward, there's no margin left when something does catch. There's no time to catch your balance, no room to recover, no half second where your body can correct itself. The fall is already happening before your brain has even registered that something went wrong. But here's what I really want you to understand, because it matters more than the trip hazards themselves. A shuffling gait isn't just a bad habit, it's a signal. It's your body telling you, quite literally, that specific muscle groups have gone quiet from disuse. The hip flexors that are supposed to lift your leg with each step, the glutes that stabilize your pelvis, the deep core muscles that keep your torso upright instead of tipping forward. All of these have weakened, sometimes significantly, simply because the shuffling pattern never asks them to do their job anymore. And alongside that physical weakening, there's a neurological piece too. The pathway between your brain and your legs, the one responsible for lifting, reaching, and landing with control, slows down from lack of use, the same way any skill fades when you stop practicing it. Now, I want to be really clear about something because I don't want you walking away from this feeling discouraged. Both of those things, the muscle weakness and the neurological slowdown, are reversible. Not in every case to 100%, but in the vast majority of the people I've worked with, meaningfully reversible and often faster than you'd expect. And it all starts with one specific deliberate change to the way you take a step. And that change is called a heel strike, and I want you to really absorb this concept because it's the foundation for everything else in this video. A proper heel strike simply means that when you take a step, your heel is the very first part of your foot to touch the ground, not your toes, not the flat of your foot landing all at once. Your heel leading the way. Think about how a young, healthy person walks without ever thinking about it. The heel lands first, then the weight rolls smoothly. Forward through the arch, across the ball of the foot, and finally pushes off through the toes to launch the next step. It's a continuous rolling, wave-like motion, and it happens to be one of the most efficient, most stable movement patterns the human body has ever developed. It's not something you learned in a class. It's something your body was built to do from the moment you started walking as a toddler. But here's what happens as the years go by, especially once balance starts to feel a little less reliable. That heel-first landing quietly disappears. The foot starts landing flatter, sometimes even toe-first, which shortens the step, lowers the foot closer to the ground, and strips away nearly all of the natural stability that a proper stride provides. Once that happens, the shuffle takes over, and here's the frustrating part. The longer someone shuffles, the weaker the muscles responsible for a proper heel strike become, because they simply aren't being called on anymore. It becomes a downward spiral. Weaker muscles create more shuffling, and more shuffling creates weaker muscles. So how do we break that cycle? It's genuinely simpler than most people expect. With every single step you take from this point forward, I want you to consciously reach your heel a few inches further forward than feels automatic, and let that heel be the first thing to touch the ground. Feel your weight begin to shift forward across your foot. Let your toes push off behind you as your other leg swings through. And above everything else, lift your foot completely off the ground before you move it forward. Don't slide it, pick it up, carry it through the air, and place the heel down deliberately. When you start doing this correctly, several things happen at once, and they all work in your favor. Your stride naturally lengthens, which improves both your stability and your forward momentum. Your foot clears the ground with real space to spare, which essentially eliminates the risk of catching your toe on something unexpected. Your posture straightens almost automatically, because a proper heel strike physically pulls your weight back and up out of that forward-leaning shuffle position. And your hip flexors, your glutes, and your core all get reactivated, which begins rebuilding exactly the strength that protects you from falling in the first place. One single adjustment, and it sets off a chain reaction through your entire body that starts working for you instead of quietly working against you. At a time, until your brain remembers how to send the right signal without you having to think it through step by step. Here's how to do it. Find a clear hallway or any long open stretch of floor near a wall or countertop you can lightly touch for balance if needed. Stand at one end and begin walking. Land first. Feel the contact. Feel the weight rolling through your foot from heel to arch to back. That's one complete set. If you can manage it comfortably and safely, aim for 2 to 3 sets, ideally once a day. The second exercise takes that same movement and slows it down dramatically. I call it the slow motion stride rebuild, and I'll completely off the ground. Pause briefly in the air. Reach the heel forward with intention. Lower it to the floor and feel the contact. Let your weight shift gradually across your foot. Push off through your toes, and only then begin the next step. Walk the full length of your hallway this way. Turn carefully and return. That's 1 set, and 2 sets is a great daily target. Relies on. Your body can no longer coast on momentum or muscle memory. Every small wobble you feel during this exercise is your balance system being actively retrained. Every tiny correction your ankle makes is your nervous system rebuilding responsiveness that shuffling had allowed to fade. Embrace that difficulty. It's not a sign something's wrong. It's the entire point of the exercise. Once you feel steady doing this near a wall, you can add a small challenge by closing your eyes for 2 or 3 of the slow steps, which meaningfully increases the demand on your body's internal balance sense and speeds up the adaptation. The third exercise focuses specifically on rebuilding your foot's push-off strength, something that tends to disappear almost completely once shuffling sets in. I call this one the heel-to-toe rock and roll. Stand near a wall or sturdy chair for support. Slowly rock your weight backward onto your heels, lifting your toes slightly off the floor, then roll your weight forward all the way onto the balls of your feet, lifting your heels as high as feels comfortable and safe. Rock back and forth slowly and with control for 10 to 12 repetitions. This exercise directly targets the muscles along the front of your shin and the calf muscles, responsible for that final push-off phase of a healthy step, the exact motion that shuffling gradually erases. The fourth exercise brings a layer of real-world unpredictability into the mix, because walking in daily life isn't just about clean, flat hallways. I call this the divided attention walk. Once the slow motion stride feels stable and comfortable on its own, try doing the same deliberate heel-first walking while gently turning your head left and right as you move, almost as if you're glancing around a room. This might sound like a small addition, but it makes a real difference. Most falls don't happen when someone is staring straight down at their feet with total focus. They happen while someone's attention is divide D, checking a doorway, glancing at a family member, reaching for a light switch. Training. Your body to maintain a stable heel strike pattern even when your attention is split is one of the most realistic and valuable things you can practice. The fifth and final exercise is the one I consider absolutely essential because it targets the exact mechanism behind most falls in people with a shuffling pattern, the inability to clear small obstacles. I call it the obstacle step over drill. Place a soft, low object on the floor. A rolled up towel, a pool noodle, or a small cushion works well, somewhere around 4 to 6 inches high. Stand a few feet back with a wall or chair within easy reach. Walk toward the obstacle at a normal, controlled pace, and as you approach, deliberately lift one foot high enough to clear it with real room to spare, heel leading the way as you land on the other side. Then lift the other foot and clear it fully as well. Continue a few steps beyond the object. Turn carefully and step back over it on your way back. Aim for 5 full passes in each direction, 10 step-overs total. The key focus here isn't speed, it's timing and confidence. Slow down slightly as you approach the obstacle rather than rushing at it. Lift your foot early, well before you reach the object, and commit to the step with a clear, deliberate motion rather than a hesitant last-second flinch. What you're really training here is your brain's ability to recognize a hazard in advance and respond to it smoothly, rather than reacting in a panic after it's already too late. Once this feels easy, you can gradually vary the height or texture of the obstacle, or even practice, stepping over it while holding something light in one hand, which mimics the way real trips actually tend to happen in everyday life. If you commit to practicing these 5 exercises consistently, and I want to stress consistently rather than perfectly, you're not just going through the motions of exercise, you're systematically rebuilding the entire walking system, strength, coordination, balance, and the neurological control that ties it all together. The ultimate goal is for a proper heel strike to become automatic again, something your body simply does without a NY conscious effort, exactly the way it did decades ago. And that shift, once it happens, tends to ripple outward into every other part of life. Confidence returns, independence returns, and the quiet background fear of falling that so many people carry without even realizing it begins to fade. Before you dive into any of this, though, I need to say something important, because your safety always comes first. If you've had a recent hip or knee replacement, if you're currently being treated for plantar fasciitis or any other heel-related condition, or if a doctor has specifically told you to avoid weight-bearing exercise, please talk to your physician or physical therapist before attempting any of these movements. Some of these exercises may need to be modified for your particular situation, and that's completely normal. Always practice near a wall, a countertop, or a sturdy chair you can reach in an instant. Never rush through any of these steps. Wear supportive, non-slip footwear, or if you prefer, go barefoot on a safe, dry surface. And if at any point you feel sharp pain, sudden dizziness, or anything that simply doesn't feel right, stop immediately. No amount of progress is worth risking an injury over. Move at your own pace and trust your body to tell you when it's ready to take the next step, both literally and figuratively. I also want to leave you with something a little broader than just the mechanics of walking, because I think it matters just as much. Getting older doesn't have to mean quietly accepting less control over your own body. It means paying closer attention to what your body actually needs at this particular stage OF life, and choosing on purpose to give it that attention every single day. A proper heel strike sounds like such a small, almost forgettable detail in the grand scheme of things. But small, correct movements repeated daily create real, lasting change in a way that occasional bursts of intense effort simply can't match. Your nervous system responds to what you remind it of consistently, not to what you do once in a blue moon. And the payoff here goes so far beyond just avoiding a fall. Strong, coordinated walking protects your ability to get your own mail, to climb your own stairs without hesitation, to chase after a grandchild in the backyard, to move through your day without that nagging background question of whether your legs will actually hold you up. That kind of freedom, that kind of quiet confidence in your own body, isn't a small thing at all. It's genuinely one of the most important things you can protect as you get older, and it starts with something as simple as where your heel lands on your very next step. So here's what I want you to do right now. You're able to safely and take just 5 steps, thinking only about your heel landing first. Notice how it feels different from your normal walk. That small awareness is the beginning of real change. I genuinely love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, when you think about your own walking pattern, does it sound more like a confident stride or more like that shuffles we talked about today? Share your age and where you're watching from, because your experience might be exactly the encouragement someone else needs to hear right now. And if this video gave you something useful, let me know by leaving a comment, and consider sharing it with someone in your life who could benefit from walking a little safer, a little stronger, starting today.